So, welcome everybody to another episode of Software Architecture on Stream. This time around with Alberto Brandolini. Alberto, do you want to say a few words about yourself?
Hello, I'm Alberto from Italy. That's gonna be my accent for this conversation. And I am at heart still a software developer. In practice, what I do in the recent days is getting paid for putting sticky notes on the walls and having long, deeper conversation about this. Sometimes it's even storming. Sometimes it's other things. And I'm into domain-driven design a lot. With software architecture, but also, everything that's around it. I really want to make big software-related initiatives succeed, and that's what I try to do.
Yeah, and you're actually the inventor of event storming, and you wrote the famous book about it. That is that you can buy on Leanpub, and I should put a link to that in the description.
Many people already know it, but for those that are expecting a finished book, it's not yet finished. Still working on it, and that's a question that we are already taking away from the probable bucket list. Yes, I will be finishing it this summer, probably.
Oh, great! That's great news. But I mean, I bought it quite a few years back, and it's really worthwhile reading it. So no matter whether you're going to finish it or not, I think it's very valuable. We actually had an episode about event storming way back, not with yourself, but and I will link to that. We've been to the collaborative modeling camp this week in Vienna, both of us. And there I asked you which subject you felt passionate about. And that led to today's subject, which is the chasm between architecture and business. So first question would be, so I consider myself not a developer as you do, but I consider myself rather an architect. So why would I even care about the business? After all, I'm not a manager, so I'm a technical person, right? So I care about architecture. Why would I care about the business then?
I think we don't have the luxury of focusing only on the technical side. That would be great. That was exactly the driving passion for many of us at the university, while building good, well-working technical stuff and having this little nerdy moment of joy when it's working. It's doing exactly what we envision and is not falling apart, and that's a great feeling, and that's a privilege. But then real life, when you start working outside, but not be exactly the same playground. And we should care about the business because the business is giving constraints on the way we can do architecture, and at the same time, software architecture is giving constraint to the business for the future evolution and choices. And so, we need to talk. We need to discuss on the fringe. We need to make a collaborative decision because if not, somebody else will be making decision upon our head without knowing the consequences. While in many cases, I think we are the ones that know the consequences, and we should correctly manage this knowledge, this expertise, our ability to see things in the long term. So it's a duty; it's not even a choice in some ways.
Yeah, and you just said that it feels almost like you're saying that there's sort of a synergy, or we are working at on the same problem. So on the one hand, we get some input from the business and some limits to what we can do, and the other way around is also true. Software architecture gives some limits to what the business can do. So we seem to be working on the same problem, and there should be lots of synergies, but we are talking about the chasm between architecture and business. So what is this about? So why is there a chasm in your opinion?
Well, there are many reasons. One might be our preferences, like so many problems on the table. Let's choose the technical ones. This is where I'm good at, and that might be an implicit bias for many of us. So talking about the other side might be getting out of our comfort zone. I think there's also a matter of languages, like which is part of the comfort zone feeling. Like we know well all the languages of the technical side. We can master UML, BPM, and we can read diagrams together. We can get nerdy and talk about scalability, level of services, and all of this stuff that is specific to our work. But the moment we get into the business side, well, the language is different and has a set of different nuances. And then, well, we are not anymore the person with the authority in the conversation. So, but it also makes the problem harder because we need to find sometimes a neutral language for the communication in the boundary area. A few other things have to do with the expectations. There are so many places where the mental model of one side about how the problem should be solved and described on the other side is faulty. One typical example is architects and software developers are the ones asked to provide numbers for costs, maybe in terms of time needed or estimations and so on. And we need to manage this uncertainty, and the level of uncertainty that we would like to provide, well, is going to take between 2 months and 2 years. That is going to be not acceptable on the other side. At the same time, if we flip the coin about, well, okay, we can prioritize the run value. Which one of these two features do you think is going to generate more revenues? Well, business doesn't know either because it's still a bet on the market, and the continuous request for more deterministic number on both sides is actually making this relationship worse. But managing uncertainty is tricky, and this is an area which is a lot grayer. We can do, I mean, it's improving on both sides. I've seen something really interesting from Barry Riley, residuality theory on the architectural side, and also a lot of stuff about thinking in bets, continuous discovery on the product side. So this uncertainty, management of uncertainty is getting better on both sides, but is also an area where we are not completely equipped to save this conversation. And in the worst case, this becomes a power play, or maybe, well, architecture is a very specific business a department, and business might be like all the other ones. And then maybe finance is playing a different game than marketing and product. So there might be different forces of play, and navigating them is hard. The other part about the expectation is the expectation about our job when it comes to software development. Like the old assumption of I tell you what you do and then you do it is still in the air. And from the software side, we know this is massively wrong. I was selecting the word carefully because we cannot trust exactly the way the business would describe the problem. There are so many nuances, but also the fact that the language, and this is where domain-driven design shines, the language is intrinsically ambiguous. We can have a language which is okay to describe a problem at a narrative or conversational level, but when it goes close to software is ones and zeros, and in between we need the language which is precise with no ambiguity and intrinsically deterministic, and this is a different job. And it's funny also to see what happens in this area when we start testing on the edge cases, like not with the software test, but with something like example mapping, Gherkin, adding numbers and names. So this customer is purchasing a $300 package exactly on December 31st, and this is happening. What happens? Oh, well, we don't know exactly. Great. That's exactly the type of ambiguity we end up solving by guessing when we don't have the answer. or that might lead into an interesting conversation. There might be choices that are controversial, and there are also areas where ambiguity is what makes the business survive, is providing the extra space for last-minute decision, context-based, and so on. And this is also another area when software people have a hard time. Like sometimes you need to have ambiguous spaces for, exactly for these context-dependent last-minute decisions. And that's what we are not really good in modeling, for example. We would like to have a deterministic sequence of rules, which are great for some problems, but not for all the problems. There's a lot of other areas to model where we need the space for negotiation, fuzziness, and different modeling and implementation styles. And you just got me started. I mean, I could talk a long time about this area, but I would say the mismatch expectations are really the big topic. I will add just another one, which is I think wrong on both sides, which is the expectation of orthogonality, like framing a problem like this is a business problem, this is an architectural problem, this is a process problem, and I think this is fundamentally wrong most of the time. Like architecture in a large organization is a powerful force. The way systems and teams are interconnected is shaping the type of collaboration, and we cannot separate architecture from collaboration and process. Not to mention that this might also be influenced by HR choices or recruitment constraints. Like in a company like this, you would need probably a system like this, but you can't because you're only hiring person from this school, and this is a dominant mindset there. So this option never gets on the table. Or remember another company where they wanted to hire more project managers to coordinate cross-team projects, and there were too many. They were adding more and more layers of coordination. And I needed to find a way to say, like, no, your architecture is terrible. You just need to split the monolith you have at the core, and then the need of coordination will progressively go away. It's not the process problem, it's an architectural problem. But then you need people in between with a little bit of competence about, agility, queuing theory, but also software architecture, but also able to speak to the business, describing the problems in this way, especially if you focus only on the technical stuff, you will be downstream to so many decisions, reducing your operating space, your degrees of freedom.
So what I like about what you just said in particular is that you said that there are, how should I put it, uncertainties on both sides. It's not just that we can't give the business any numbers about the effort that we are going to spend, but also business can't give us good ideas about how to prioritize things, and which means that it's basically the same problem on both sides. And we seem to be blaming each other for the uncertainties and the problems that we have, even though the other side has sort of the same problems. And I also liked how you said that it's not really that clear whether it's an architecture problem or a business problem. In particular, what you just said, that here is, you want to add some managers for coordination, and really the problem is more on the architecture level. So it's not on the level of management coordination, but rather it's on the architecture level, and you do something about that there. So we've probably all been to that, and maybe we didn't realize how the problems are all interconnected. But is there any advice that you can give to solve the problem? So one of the, or let me ask a different question first. Maybe that's even more helpful. So one person submitted to the forum just before the stream started the question that TOGAF knows the role of business architects and enterprise architects. So is that something that can help? So I have that problem, and now I hire some business architect or some enterprise architect to bridge the gap between business and architecture.
Well, I'm not a big fan of fixed roles, especially. I mean, I've seen also you are describing two problems in the same question. I will start with the second one. Like hiring a person in a given role to solve the problem is creating a messiah effect, and I think this is bad for itself, because the problem has been there because of systemic forces. Is probably being growing, and then the last person joining the company is expected to have sort of a magic wand, but at the same time he's going to be the person that with the least knowledge of the undergoing politics. So it's going to take months before realizing exactly how can I make this little change happen, because talking to this person didn't solve the problem, talking with this other person just opened another problem, and how do I navigate this complexity? So waiting for the messiah is a problem in itself, and usually that's something that we try to attack. Now look at the problem. What can we do right now? We maybe need to build a little map of the problem, realize that that is systemic. So we'll have loops and reinforcing loops and existing forces. What can we try to change right now with the people we have, and not wait? I mean, the thing that I really don't like is knowing that we have a problem, a mysterious person is going to be our savior. If that's a dominant approach, your organization is already in bad smelling waters. Like that's a first thing. The second problem is probably highlighted already in the solution. Like I think my entire career, I was not working in my role. I mean, I was hired with a job title, but then what I was doing, I was looking at the important thing that was not happening, and waiting for a person to join. It takes time, but nobody is preventing me to do that thing. It's not. It happened only once. There was a gigantic project management problem in a given situation, and somebody told me you should only focus about architecture. And I think my answer was something like, I don't want to play in the band on the Titanic. Because clearly my responsibility is playing in the band, but we are hitting into an iceberg. Nobody's going to remember my solo. That's the point. And so I think keeping the eyes open, something is not happening. And maybe the thing that is not happening that doesn't even have a job role, a position, and a clear responsibility, but it is there. Somebody you might get out of your role, or just raise the hand and ask for help. That's really, really outside of the comfort zone. But realizing something is not happening, I think that is the most important thing. And also, just trying to do something doesn't have to be perfect. It's not necessarily fixing an emergency. Sometimes it's just showing that this is something that needs to be done. But yeah, sorry. Please.
So I would like to stick to the example that you just gave. So there is a project manager, and the project manager is not living up to the expectation, and you're the architect. And now someone says, well, this is not really your problem. You need to care about the architecture. In that situation, you don't even have, amended or some kind of order or to solve the problem. Quite the opposite. You're told not to solve the problem. That's what I understand. So how can you even solve the problem then? Because, I mean, if you look at the rules, it's not your problem. And, if you try to solve the problem, you're sort of overstepping your responsibilities. And that might be something that not everybody likes to see or even to support. So what do you do about that?
Well, that's exactly one of it depends scenario. So that situation was really many years ago, more than 15. And then my answer was, well, then I don't want to be here. And actually, personally, I was like, I don't want to be in this position ever again, because as an employee, seeing the whole of something important which is not happening and seeing the boat sinking, that's not a nice position. So you only have two options: or you try to fix it, making it an emergency, or, well, I'm helpless. Then what is even the point of in staying here? When it comes to consulting, instead, I'm in a different role. So I might decide to uh, frame the engagement in a way that provides me enough space and safety to work with it. Sometimes we work as a team of people with a different expertises and coverage. But it's funny the way we do this as a consulting team. Like we don't have we have very good specialists, but they're never vertical specialists. There's so much overlapping areas between us. Like there are architects which have a very strong knowledge about agility and processes. Is this going to be the primary responsibility? No. Are they going to be able to fix a hole in this gap? Absolutely yes. Or maybe talk with the other specialist in proper terms, or seeing the emergency before it happens. And this is true also when talking about product management and vision and strategy, and also coding and crafting. If you know only one thing, well, you're already doomed, because it is not only you are not mastering the white space between a discipline and the other one, and there's too much stress over the connection. I need to talk with this person, and I need to talk with this person. This doesn't work. So actually, I guess part of the solution is reading tons of books, which probably you have done too, but not only focusing on one thing. And but I need you to re-ask the second part of the question, because I think I lost a bit. So
Yeah, I mean, I think there is very good advice there for a consultant, and the advice seems to me that if you are a consultant of some type, like an architecture consultant, be prepared to solve problems in other areas as well, like business and I don't know, organization, agility, whatever, and therefore you need a broad knowledge. However, you said yourself that if you're in an organization, you are assigned a specific role, like architect, and you're working outside that role.
yep.
I guess there is very little that you can do, or if you want to try to work outside that role, maybe you can escalate. But if people keep telling you that this is not your problem,
Well,
then you have to leave the company, right? I mean, that's basically what you did.
in that was a specific consulting scenario.
Okay.
So was they were framing the situation in a way that was not giving me any guarantee for the life of the problem, and they were clearly ignoring the signal. Well, the thing here is, I would say, the curse of the architect. Some trajectories of evolution are pretty much deterministic, but we see them and the business doesn't. Is if you do this and this at the beginning of the project, we know it's going to end like this. And if we get answered like, oh, no, don't worry, and we have too many white hairs in our beard, no, I worry. I know I've never seen your option working, and I know this and this and this are needed. You're telling me to cross my fingers and this is going to be okay. No, I already know this is going to be a bloodbath, and I don't need 6 months of wasted life to know this. There's something in the architecture toolkit, things like context mapping, for example, which are giving a lot of insights about this initiative is gonna fail because of this, and this. If we don't address this in a reasonable amount of time, we are not going to succeed. If there is any hope of fixing this, and I can see the opportunity of fixing this, of working on the deterministic area, well, then it's a completely different attitude. I'm becoming a Rottweiler, and okay, let's fix this, and see the result. I really been in both situations. The thing is, I see 6 months of almost deterministic future. It's not exact. Business can still change the CEO. Many things can happen, but the project trajectory, when you have enough experience, you know these things. Maybe we fail in communicating this, or getting believed. But I don't believe in miracles anymore.
Yeah. So Martin Igli just, or even 7 minutes ago, said, problem, not belief in his own profit. And I think that's actually what you just described, right? That you have that profit, that you might even pay for their prophecy, and they still don't believe it. So what's the solution? I mean, one solution might be to become better in communication, because you said that, you're not understood or maybe not believed. Is that something that you would suggest, or do you have any other ways of solving these kinds of problems?
So, well, a lot of what we do when start new consulting engagement, or also as a specific service in itself, is framing the problem. So one thing purely as a consultant is I don't let the customer frame the problem. Well, I let them. They already did some framing. They're calling us for an advice. But then part of the consulting perspective is looking into what is this specific person not including in the picture. I mean, they might be, and more likely are, part of the problem. There might be something that they do in a total good faith, but which is causing a systemic effect that they are not controlling. Or there might be something that they are blind to. So if as a consultant, I just join accepting the framing that I'm getting provided, I'm just another part of their machine, and I think I'm going to be ineffective in 2 or 3 months quickly. I need to see the machine. And usually this part of this reframing happens in some workshop, when we can see the human dynamics and the problem description together, and actually is not only something that we do with the event storming. It might be other formats, but seeing the people together and exploring business forces, architectural forces, interpersonal relationship, and all of the possible little dysfunction in the way, it's a great way to see the system as a whole and the way it behaves. Also, there's one thing which is, in this case, more specific to event storming. One of the problems that we are facing as software people is assuming that the stories, the narratives about describing the business are consistent. And they are not. But taken individually, they are all legitimate, and they make sense. It is good advice for determining requirements. But the collection of these individual narratives or interviews, it doesn't compile as a whole. The problem is, if I am the one collecting this information and realizing that they don't sum up, add up, I now have the duty and the burden of telling the business, look, all of your stories are not working well together. And they might not see it, because I try to see the whole end-to-end business in this case, but they are focusing on their own department. So their sentences are locally true, but they are globally inconsistent. But I end up owning this problem, which is not mine. And one of the great advantages of large-scale workshop, if we can make them work well, is that business can realize that the combination of their individual narratives becomes inconsistent. And so that's something that needs to be redefined, work better at a given areas. And suddenly they realize that, oh, this is a little bit more our problem or a global systemic problem. And that's a major shift.
Yeah.
I can put it in a catchy phrase, which is we can't align architecture to business if the business is not aligned with itself.
Mm.
And that's, I would say, 99% of what I do.
Yeah, but I just want to underline in a way what you just said, because when I read your book about event storming, I found it interesting that there is quite a lot of pages spent on the social interactions of the people while they do event storming. And I think it's, in a way, what you just said, or at least what I think you just said, maybe you want to comment on that, is that event storming is not just a tool to get the requirements right and to understand the business logic, but also to understand how people interact. And you can watch them interact and then see what the how the organization works. And also, what you just said is that event storming is a good tool to see how the business works, and to see whether it's consistent, and not just for yourself, but also for the people participating, which is a communication problem. So it means that it might help to solve a communication problem between the people who are participating as domain experts in the event storming, not communication between domain experts and people who are supposed to implement the system, but domain experts themselves. And I think this is both very interesting. And I had we had this episode with Xing Chao way back, a few months back, and she said that we should be not just concerned with the artifact, like in this case, the big picture event storming that is on the wall then, but also with the process that led us there. And I think this is quite interesting. And I think it's also interesting because, you invented event storming, and now we are at the point where this other subject that we're discussing actually ended up being, well, related to event storming, obviously.
Yeah, but let's say, in a way, I could be even more brutal. For some ideas, event storming might just be an excuse. So we need to put the key people in the same room and give them something to do together. You already see something in terms of interpersonal dysfunction. Well, event storming is giving you more precise information about how a business flow can generate value, which are the systems interconnected, which are the natural boundaries and the areas of responsibilities that might get involved, and this can help you shape the bounded context underlying. But there's also another, not exactly hidden part, but let's call it unofficial part, which is most of the enterprise projects, they don't fail because of technology, they fail because of politics. And I like calling event storming is my walking skeleton through the departments. I need to see if my network of alliances on the business side is robust enough to sustain the project, or if I already have some traitors in the room, or somebody with a hidden agenda, somebody who is supporting a different idea, or that might be feel threatened by what we need to do. All of this becomes incredibly visible. We clearly are not stopping during the workshop. Oh, I think we found an enemy. No, that's not what we do. But we detect the information. We might realize that, okay, this is going to be tricky because this and this and this. It also can show, and maybe I'm creating a safer environment for me, that some workshop that seemed bumpy, oh, that was not a very good workshop. Maybe it was great. It just highlighted that you have a problem right there in the relationship between these two people. And this is the blocker that you want to know before even starting the project. It happened only a few times. I mean, I realize I have an adverse selection bias here. I like telling those stories of the corner cases, but in practice, most of the time, the the differences and the forces get more aligned towards a common direction. This is what the average big picture event storming leads to. But if we have strong blockers, they become visible, but they also can be addressed. So that's actually a good point here.
Great. I just had a look at more submissions from the form. So there was a question that is more than half, that is even from the start of the stream, about when the book will be ready. And you said this summer, so that's already answered.
Hopefully. I mean, that's scientifically, if it took me, well, I don't know, like probably 7 years to get here, the safety you're going to have, you probably need more 7 years to be completed. But if you want an intention, my intention is to work hard on it and finish it this summer.
Excellent.
I want to have a simpler life after this.
Then there was something that I think we discussed, that's like from 3 minutes ago. So collaborative tools like event storming help even the business people to understand the business better. And I think that's something that we just discussed.
Yes, but that's not what you sell to the business. Like, you could never tell them, you should join my event storming workshop so you can understand your business better. You should, well, treat people with respect before the workshop. You should also realize that event storming is a really weird thing to explain beforehand, and telling, well, this workshop is going to help you to understand your job better. Well, that's almost close to insulting. Like, I've been doing this business for 20 years. Now, a stupid Italian clown with orange stickies is going to make my job better. Come on. No, that's not how you frame it. But you can linearize the understanding of the business. This is something that I can rightfully promise. And if you have a blind spot between different departments, this is an area where you can really help. And then, without making any big fuss, somebody's gonna understand their own business better. We know this. Just don't advertise it. It's a secret cherry on the pie when it happens.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, that you shouldn't announce it that way, but I thought like the normal way of advertising event storming at this point would be to say, okay, we need to understand, everyone needs to understand the business, like the development people need to understand the business from the domain experts, and to sell it that way, to better understand the requirements, to get a low-tech, lightweight approach to understand the requirements. And then you realize that also the business people learn something. That's at least how I would try it. And I think you said something different, or do you agree?
It's I would say it's very, very context dependent. Like there is one thing is your starting point. Like I have a privileged position. I am the event storming guy. If companies are calling me to run an event storming, they already decided, they already convinced to do an event storming, and I can raise the bar about asking more people in the room,
Right.
because there's going to be only one chance. Well, I can still come back, but then it's going to look like weird. And then I will leverage my position to make sure that the first big bang workshop is delivering as much result as possible. But that's my privilege. And if you are inside the company, and if you are working there as a software architect for the last 4 or 5 years, you won't have this privilege of being the special guest for only one day. You're not exactly a commodity, but you might be perceived as that. And also, you might need to build your credibility around this. Like you never did an event storming in this company, and suddenly you're summoning half of the board, and who the hell are you? Like you might have legitimate resistances, and then the path to get to where you need to go might really be iterative. Like Well, start small. Start with the people you can easily influence. Start without even calling it an event storming. You might want to hack existing smaller meetings, well, requirement grooming is one of the easy one. It's already there. People already allocated maybe 2 hours of their time for doing this, and your competitor is maybe a boring meeting. Well, even storming was so better. Well, look for weak opponents is a very nasty way to put it, but if you want to start and make some practice and get some early feedback from your trusted friends, colleague, well, starting small is actually a good thing to do. And if somebody then asking, oh, this was cool, but maybe we should do it also with this and this and these people, that's what you already knew, but maybe you didn't have yet the political leverage to go in this direction. So really find a safe path to get there, and don't put your curiosity for doing event storming at the top of your priorities. Like your company doesn't care about event storming, but event storming can be a great tool to solve some of the problems your company is aware of, and also some of the problems your company is not yet aware, but you need the first ones to lead the demand for the workshop.
So there was another remark from the forum, which is, we cross all our fingers for you for the book. So I think that's great.
And it's going to be a very long summer, and a lot of jobs in the AER room at the end of August with people with finger crossed.
Yeah, and also I understand that after the summer on the Northern Hemisphere, there will be the summer on the Southern Hemisphere. So, well, anyways. So there was another point on also on the forum, which is steering discussions between business and all other stakeholders are definitely necessary. And I agree, it helps to hold the politics at a minimum during the discussion. Any comments on that?
Well, I don't know what politics is. Like, I really need to navigate this, but I also don't want to discuss stuff where there is an invisible layer. So there's one part of politics which is usually hidden, and it's a gigantic elephant in the room in many places, and which is if there are conflicting individual bonuses, which are not discussed. But this is, I would say, if I'm looking for a strategic blocker in a priority list, this is number one. If I see initiative fails, this is the most annoying reason. So sometimes, depending on the type of engagement, I ask if there are going to be something like this problems in this space, because let's say worst case scenario, bonuses have been discussed individually in a long discussion with HR, creating a system of forces which has never been modeled. Like some companies didn't even realize that this bonus and this bonus were creating a pool of conflicting forces, or in the different goals for departments on top of a shared software development team. That's not an agility problem. That's a vague priorities problem, and we need to resolve that. The thing gets even messier if you have not a single service team, but many teams apparently in parallel on top of a service team. So you had a layer hiding the fact that you're still trying to steal somebody else's pie in terms of backlog hours on the service team in a discussion which is never going to be a win-win. It's a clearly win-lose and can only be solved with strategic priorities. And well, sometimes we can see it. Other times, it's not supposed to be part of the discussion, but it shows up during a big event storming. The moment we look into, okay, let's prioritize the ideas, and in healthy places, the support tends to converge towards the most important thing quite naturally. When this is not happening, it's many times the signal of there's something that these people are not telling you. Might be something that I'm legitimately not even entitled to ask, but I know it's there. My nose is getting it. So, okay, we need to have a deeper conversation later on, because if after an entire day of exploration, people are not aligned on what is the most important thing to do, then there is a deeper problem, and not the official goal of event storming, but it surfaced. So now we cannot ignore it.
Yeah. And I just want to add two things. I mean, concerning the individual bonuses, there is this saying, which is a good manager always hits their number, even if the company goes bankrupt over it. So, and I think that's pretty much what you said, that there might be, competing individual goals that don't sum up to something that makes sense overall. And I mean, concerning this, and I agree, it helps to hold the politics at a minimum. I think, to put it bluntly, I think you just said, and also said before, quite the opposite. I mean, what you basically said, in my opinion, is that politics become obvious, and that's a value. And you just explained that, I think, very well, that if there are certain expectations, like you should have some agreement on what's the highest priority. And if there is no such agreement, then there is a problem. And the problem is not, is around how people interact, about politics, basically, and individual incentivations and so on. And that's an important result of event storming, because, as you said, that would otherwise sink the project. And that way, so it sort of becomes obvious in event storming, where there is not so much to lose compared to the project that might fail afterwards. And then you can work on it, right? I mean, once it becomes obvious, you might be able to solve it.
Sometimes you cannot solve it. Like, I mean, there are situations which are above our pay grade that we just can unlock. But then we see it like this organization lives on a contradiction. And then, okay, is this a place where I want to stay? Maybe it's fine for me for the next 2 or 3 years, but the contradiction is there. Now I cannot unsee it. There's also another thing that was part of the clash, which is the implicit assumption of the conflict between short-term and long-term goals. Like, as an architect, we are biased into long-lasting systems and long-term decisions. Like, we are building for the future, and the term architect makes us think like, I want to do something which is gonna last for a long time. With really weird consequences, because sometimes you need to build system that needs to be easily replaceable. I mean, a monolith is a different mental shape of a pyramid, but it's going to stay for a long time because it's too hard to change. So not exactly the best way of shaping the future. But anyway, we might also choose for long-term availability or maintainability. And yes, by default, we are playing the long game. Which game is the business side playing? Well, I don't know. And one of the typical scenarios is what happens in some startups, when architects are making a long-term decision, while some business side is just like optimizing for a short-term revenue. The moment the company gets some funding or some merger offering or some exit in some ways. So while you are architecting for a 10 years evolution perspective, somebody's trying to maximize the financial value of the organization with a 6 months or 1 year scenario. And I would say, I hope we could be honest about it, because choices are changing, and by default, people like me and you are thinking about, yes, in the long term. But if in the long term the other person is gone away with a trolley full of cash, then this discussion is not about good or bad architecture. It's about long and short term horizon. And let's be honest about it. And I would say this is one of the most important forces to consider.
Yeah, and I think that's a very good point. So that architecture, in particular, if you look at maintainability, it's a long-term game, and it's a game around sustainability, while the business might be interested in short-term goals. So what's your advice? If I'm in a startup, I think there might be a good case that if we don't reach specific business goals by some specific point in time, we are just out because,
Yep.
there is no money anymore, and we won't get any money from any VCs or angel investors and so on, and we are done. So, what's your advice? Would you still insist on the long-term goals that you're supposed to focus on as an architect, or that you're led to focus on as an architect, or would you rather conform to the short-term goals and support the business in that way?
I would probably plot the trajectory. I mean, there's one enemy here, which is the assumption that puts the word quick and dirty together. And I would like to go quick and clean. And I'm totally okay in getting quick answers for the market and privileging the feedback loop versus the robustness if there's something that we are trying to achieve too early, especially if you are trying to achieve it too early because this is part of our role and discipline and so on. If this is postponing the feedback, well, that's a bad idea. So we need to be really, really well aware of the style of design needed in a given moment in time. But we also know that this might turn into a trap. The moment you start making money with the prototype, suddenly the business think that, oh, we have a full running enterprise architecture. No. We just have a prototype that was robust enough to put some cash in. And the transition between this and this needs to be gradual, evolutionary, but needs to happen. It's not like, well, now let's focus on the next features because the business got greedy when they start seeing the money flowing in. So there's a trajectory to be balanced, and maybe many little things and choices that could let us build robustness step by step without compromising future flexibility. What I'm saying is there are some choices which are badly reversible, and some other choices that I mean, there are asymmetries in this case, like keeping everything mixed in a single monolithical model. It's one of the common ways startups are built, but you can also have quickly a vision of what the bounded context might be in a startup exploration for a business flow. That's something that you can see in 1, maximum 2 days of exploration. And then you can stick to the logical boundaries, even if you have a single development team. You can still make something tidy, even if you are in exploratory mode. The moment you need to scale up with more teams, more boundaries, this becomes really, really smooth. While refactoring a monolith, once you have 15, 20 developers already working on the same code base with more boundaries, oh, that's a more intricate refactoring. So we can make it easier first. There are some action which will make the cleanup and the evolution faster. And I would say, yeah, bounded context is probably the most effective ones. And especially if you can do this at the logical level only, premature decomposition into microservices or other deployment structure in a smaller team doesn't make any sense. But logical decomposition plus discipline could work. Of course, this is really context dependent. The moment I say plus discipline, it actually implies that I have a small development team of people I trust. If I have a high turnover of people popping in and out, then discipline is not going to be my tool because, well, it's going to take ages to explain this is how we do things and so on. So even team stability becomes really important. Is this an architectural problem? I would say yes. If we only focus on the technical side, well, then this becomes a problem as well.
So Martin Ikli in the chat said this is a battle between architects and project managers, and I guess I would agree because that's quite frequently also outside startups. One of the things, like how it just put it in quickly and then you're done. I think it's interesting, the answer you just gave, because the answer didn't say, or that's at least not what I heard or understood, that you should give in mindlessly to what the business side says, but
No,
to be a little bit smarter about it and look at sort of the big picture. Um, so that's interesting, I think.
well, my no was really, really meant we should make architectural decision. We know what is going to happen. The business doesn't. And even worse, sometimes the business doesn't even care because they having a shorter term horizon. But an architectural decision is our duty. Sometimes we need to
Mhm.
be really, really keen in defending it. I'm really, really okay in having all these decisions together, but there is a line. I am the software architect and you are not. I know what is going to happen. I know how software maintenance works. I know how people enjoy writing code for new functionalities, and they might get to the point of resigning if they are forced to maintain a horrible code base. And some of these code bases are even unhealthy places from a mental
Mhm.
health point of view in the worst cases. So there are some things that only people like us can understand. This responsibility is on ourselves. Like, I don't do what people tell me to do. That's the red line. I'm going to listen to you. I'm curious about all your needs. We can plot an evolutionary strategy together. Don't tell me how to do architecture.
Yeah.
I don't know if I sounded amicable or not, but there's a line.
Yeah, I think this is quite interesting, because what I tend to tell people, in particular with a startup, with this scenario of a startup, that at the end of the day, if you have in 1 year, you have money for a year, let's assume, and at the end of the year you have a very maintainable system, but you don't have product market fit, then you're out, and the maintainable system won't pay off. And therefore, I urge people to consider the business perspective even more. But I think there are quite a few. So that's what I usually tell them. And in particular, also, if you look at some of the startups like Amazon, for example, that's the first I know from the top of my head. I mean, they did that rewrite of the whole system at one point. So maybe you need to get used to the fact that whatever you're doing with a startup might be something that is not sustainable in the long term, anyways. But I think there are quite a few interesting points that you made, that people might be frustrated, that it might be an unhealthy place to be there if the quality is really low, and also that, as you said, quick and dirty are not. Um,
They shouldn't be together. There is a quick and clean possibility, which is not taking twice the time. And
and also, if you do it dirty, it might be slower. I mean, at one point, eventually, it will be slow, and that might even be in the short term. So I
and
think
this
that's
happens faster than you think. But also, you set the message. Oh, we do dirty things here. Want to join? Oh, come on. That's not the place where I would like to work. It's just if you set the example, we're doing things tidy here, and this is the example. Okay, I can fit into this paradigm. It doesn't have to be slow. That's what I really care about, because if what we do is redundant layers of indirection and something which looks like a ceremony code, no, that's not the point. But readability, attention to the type system of what we can already determine to be a point for evolution, and decoupling on the axis that might be evident on even storming modeling session. Well, that's something that should be put in place like this. If you see it decoupled, and if you couple artificially, then this is just suicidal. We know that it's going to end like this. We know we need a point of indirection in this area. At least let's put a placeholder for that in this point.
great. So there is one final comment that I would like to read out, which is, I'm afraid, something that goes back to to the discussion of consulting and what is your role, but I still find it interesting. So, Dude Root on YouTube said, "I fully agree with being hired as consultant for something and ending doing something different. I also approached the problem which was existing in the company by talking to different people to solve the issue so that the project moves forward. 2 years later, I was at the short edge because the upper management classified me based on the title of the job and not the impact." So I think that's an interesting comment, right? I mean, what this basically says is, okay, I'm not the project manager. I had some, for example, I had some influence on the project. I managed the project or made it successful, and I'm only considered the architect. So afterwards, if it's about payment and these kinds of things, and also job titles, so if I apply for a different job at a different company, I'm stuck because I'm still considered an architect, while really I did something completely different. Any advice? Any comments on that?
I mean, that's too much that I don't know about this scenario. What I know is inside the company, I never really cared about my title. Also because, title was coming and going, and then I was doing things. But people around me knew what was my contribution, and so I saw similar situation that people were evaluated about their contribution. I had a colleague that was having an aura like every single project happening in his room, even if he was not directly involved, projects were going faster because he was disseminating ideas just by listening what they were doing. Can the top management detect it? No. Was he doing a great job? Yes. Did the people around him know about it? Yes. I think the problem is not in a space that we can address. Is in the way HR puts stuff into an Excel, and maybe you should have a little conversation about it. And but that's not the thing that even Storming or DDD can help you with. Just my personal suggestion. This is the rules for salaries or evaluation not exactly something I can rely upon.
Yeah, I think it's the answer that you gave makes perfect sense, right? I mean, it is about how do you evaluate the individual contribution of some people, and actually that's a very tough question. And there are people who claim that you can't even do it, as you said, right? If you have that person in the room that spreads ideas all the time, but doesn't really contribute any code, and is considered a developer, then if you just look at the individual contribution in terms of code, it might be very low, but it might be a huge contribution to the team overall. And we had that episode. I did that episode about how do you evaluate. In German, I'm afraid, how do you evaluate the productivity of developers? And
I don't, as individuals, I don't. You're part of an ecosystem. I remember giving a presentation many years ago where I was modeling teams as rock bands with all the possible consequences, but also it just to me just meant like what I care about is the alchemy between the band. The band is making great song. Doesn't make any sense to have a remote bass player from the other side of the world, or to have two bass player to improve productivity. And then the contribution is in the quality of the songs, and sometimes not even on the number. So that's I would say a better mindset to use for thinking and framing. And if you're looking for individual productivity, no, there are so many other ways to deal with it. Like you can spot outliers in both directions, and but putting into numbers. Oh, come on, no.
yeah, I think I read somewhere on social media this idea to put some engine on the desk of the manager who insists on evaluating individual productivity, and ask them to find the most productive part of that engine. And I think that's a very good point.
Yeah, Well, I need to, in this case, I would need to know the people, understand a little bit what's going on, why these people are asked to do this task. Like I met a lot of people that were performing a very dumb activity. They didn't actually believe in it. And they were just asked to be doing this by somebody higher in the hierarchy. And they didn't have the weapons or the strength to say, like, I think this is bullshit. But yeah, I managed to arrive past one hour without saying the word bullshit. But yeah, no, it came out.
Excellent. So thanks a lot. Anything that we left out that you still want to add, or shall we wrap it up?
Well, let me check. Yeah, there's one thing that I would like to add. There was one thing that I had in my mind as part of the mindset, which is if we need to talk better with the other side, we need to master a different language. We cannot expect them to understand ours. We cannot expect the business to understand an even storming artifact or a worldly map or anything like this. We need to do more than the extra mile. It's probably 2 or 3 miles in the other direction in practicing finding more languages and also when we use some tools to discover the nature of the problem, we might need another tool to communicate our findings, like maybe a short storytelling narrative to describe what was the story we had out of even storming, a different strategy artifact if we discover something in a worldly map or anything. That we have a little bit of communication laziness sometimes, or we simply don't have time to get down that path because we have to fix stuff in the legacy. But the conversation on the boundary is not going to happen on our tools and artifacts or UML or even storming. The final communication maybe is happening on a new media, and we need to jump on that media too.
Which I think is a very good point, because it's something that we can change and will definitely or hopefully improve communication with the business side. So we just got one comment in the form, which is thank you very much for your insights. So I would like to say that to say the very same. So thank you very much for your insights, and that's it. Have a great weekend.
Thank you for the question, the comments. Thank you for joining. Thank you for being patient about the finished version of my book. Thank you for crossing fingers, and have a nice weekend.
Yeah, have a nice weekend too. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye.